There was once a man named Richard, a wealthy businessman who lived in a world built by his ambition. His life was measured by contracts, numbers, and board meetings. He owned everything a person could desire: a mansion overlooking the city, luxury cars that lined his driveway, and the respect of everyone who wanted to be him. But among all that grandeur, there was one small voice that often went unheard: the voice of his 7-year-old daughter. Emily. Richard's wife, Claire, had passed away 2 years ago. Since that day, Richard's home had grown quieter, colder. He had buried his pain in work, convincing himself that success could fill the space that grief had hollowed out. And while he chased profits, his daughter quietly drifted into her own world, a world he never took the time to understand. Every morning before Richard left for work, he would see Emily sitting on the floor of her room, facing the wall. She'd sit there for minutes, sometimes hours, unmoving, silent, staring. At first he assumed it was just childish imagination. Maybe she was playing some game or pretending. But as weeks turned into months, her routine never changed. Every single day after school, she would quietly walk to her room, close the door, and face the wall again. Richard didn't ask why. He didn't have time. There was always a meeting waiting, a deal to close, an investor to please. He told himself that she was fine, that kids had their own ways of coping. But deep down, he knew something wasn't right. One evening, Richard came home earlier than usual. The mansion was silent, except for the faint hum of the grandfather clock. He walked down the hallway, passing the empty guest rooms, the spotless living room that no one ever used, and the picture of his late wife that hung above the stairs, smiling in a way that made the silence heavier. He opened Emily's door slightly, peeking inside. There she was again, sitting on the floor, her little knees drawn close, facing that same wall. The lamp beside her flickered gently, casting a soft glow on the wall she stared at every day. Richard's eyes narrowed. For the first time, he looked closer. There was something drawn faintly on the wall, something hidden beneath layers of light pencil marks and smudges. He stepped closer, quietly, his breath shallow. The wall was covered with dozens of small drawings. Some were childish sketches, stick figures, stars, flowers. But others were more detailed. They were pictures of a woman, always smiling, holding a little girl's hand. In each one, the woman had long hair and gentle eyes. Richard's heart clenched. It was Claire, his late wife. Emily had been sitting there day after day, drawing her mother, trying to keep her alive in the only way she knew how. Every line, every curve was a memory she refused to let fade. As Richard stood there, staring at the drawings, he noticed something else, written in tiny letters near the floor. Words shaky and uneven, written by a child's hand. "Mommy, I'm sorry. I'll be good. Please come back." The weight of those words struck him like a blow. His knees felt weak. He realized in that moment that his daughter had been carrying guilt, a guilt no child should ever bear. Richard's mind went back to the day Claire died. He remembered Emily sitting quietly in the hospital waiting room, clutching a stuffed bear, too young to understand what was happening. He remembered himself, too broken, too angry at the world to comfort her. He had shut down completely. He had told her to be strong, but he never told her that it wasn't her fault. He never held her. He never helped her grieve. And now she was facing a wall every day, begging for forgiveness that was never hers to ask. That night, Richard sat on the edge of her bed long after she fell asleep. He looked at the little girl who had lost her mother, and in many ways, her father too. He saw the dried tears on her cheeks, the faint paint stains on her fingers. He realized he had been living like a ghost, chasing wealth while ignoring the only treasure that mattered. He had been building skyscrapers, but his daughter had been building memories on a wall, because that was all she had left of love. The next morning, for the first time in months, Richard didn't go to work. Instead, he sat beside Emily as she faced the wall again. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. He simply took a brush, dipped it in color, and began painting beside her. At first, Emily looked at him in confusion. Her tiny hands froze in midair. Then slowly she began to smile. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't drawing alone. Together, they painted, the woman with the long hair, the smiling family, the garden where they used to play. Richard's tears blurred his vision, but he didn't stop, because for the first time, he was building something real, not for the world to see, but for his daughter to feel. Days passed, and the wall began to transform. What was once a silent space of grief became a living canvas, filled with colors, laughter, and healing. They painted butterflies, rainbows, a big house with 3 figures standing outside, a father, a mother, and a little girl holding both their hands. Richard began spending more time at home. He cooked breakfast, badly, but Emily giggled at every burnt pancake. He walked her to school, holding her hand, realizing how small it felt in his. He read her bedtime stories. Even when she fell asleep halfway through, slowly, the distance between them faded, replaced by the warmth that once filled their home. One evening, Emily came running to him, her hands covered in paint. She pointed at the wall and said softly, "Mommy would love this." Richard nodded, tears filling his eyes again. He looked at the wall, now glowing with color and love, and whispered silently to Claire, "I hope she does." That night, as Emily slept peacefully, Richard sat in his study and opened his laptop. For the first time, he didn't open a business report or a financial statement. Instead, he opened a photo folder labeled Claire. He began printing pictures, moments he had long ignored because they hurt too much to see. Pictures of their wedding, their vacations, Emily's first birthday. The next morning, he framed those photos and hung them along the hallway, so that every step his daughter took would be filled with love, not loneliness. Weeks later, Richard noticed something new. Emily no longer faced the wall. She still loved to draw, but now she sat by the window, letting sunlight touch her paper as she sketched smiling faces and bright skies. She had moved from shadows to light, and so had he. Richard had finally realized that no amount of success could replace presence. No mansion could echo with laughter if love didn't live inside it, and no father could ever buy back the moments he chose to miss. Years later, that wall remained untouched, the same colorful mural of memories that Emily and her father had created together. When guests visited, they often asked Richard why he hadn't repainted it. He would simply smile and say, "Because this wall taught me how to love again." And sometimes late at night he'd stand before it, tracing the drawings with his fingertips. He'd remember the little girl who used to face the wall in silence, and the man who was too blind to see her pain. Now, he saw her every day, and not as the daughter he failed, but as the reason he learned what truly mattered. In life, love isn't measured by what we give in wealth, but by the time, presence, and warmth we offer to those we care for. Sometimes, children don't need answers. They just need us to sit beside them, to listen, and to heal together. And if we ever forget what love looks like, we only need to look at the walls our hearts have built, because sometimes, behind that silence lies the most beautiful story waiting to be seen.